This video was sponsored by Skillshare.
Today, I'm going to show you a very unique way on how to prepare biltong so that it can last you over 50 years without refrigeration. Welcome to the Two Guys in a Cooler channel, everyone. I hope you're having a great day. My name is Eric, and you heard me right. Today, we're going to be making a version of biltong that combines some very cool food preservation techniques. Biltong is South Africa's #1 meat snack, and in my opinion, it's the perfect meat snack. It is incredibly easy to make and insanely delicious. And in the last video that we posted on how to make biltong, one particular question kept coming up over and over, and it dealt with shelf stability. You know, how can we store it and how can we make it last longer? Now, personally, I've never had a problem with storing biltong because usually everything that we make is gone within, 4 or 5 days. Anyway, but I certainly understand the need for having a meat product that has an incredible shelf life and doesn't require refrigeration. I mean, after all, we may be on the verge of creating South Africa's most tasty survival food. In order to make this 50-year-old version of biltong, we're going to need to get our hands on some biltong. Now, you can either buy biltong from the store already made, or you can make it yourself, which is a preferred option. But either way, we're going to have to get our hands on some biltong. And for this version, it does not matter what recipe you choose to follow. So if you're going to make it yourself, you could use whatever recipe you want. Not too long ago, we posted a video called Biltong for Beginners, and then shortly after that, we made a video on how to build a biltong box, and I'll put both of those video suggestions at the end of this video if you want to see how we made our super easy, super tasty version of biltong. But let me just give you a quick rundown on how to make biltong. You're going to start by slicing your beef. The next step is to season it and cure it. Once you season and cure your beef, you're going to hang it in an area to dry. Most commonly, people hang these in biltong boxes, but if you have a room that doesn't have a lot of pests like flies or anything like that, you can just hang it in your room. Now, typically, biltong is hung to dry for anywhere between 3 to 6 days, give or take, depending on the level of doneness, because the longer you hang biltong, the drier it's going to be. And this is where our version is going to take a slight little twist. We want to hang our biltong for a minimum of 7 days, possibly even 15 to 20 days, because we want our biltong to be completely dry. And that's what makes this version so shelf stable. Through that process, if you start to see
Mold or anything like that grow on your meat, what I like to do is just open up the biltong box, go ahead and unplug the light so there's no power to the biltong box, and then I just spray it down with a 50-50 water and vinegar solution. And this is going to inhibit the growth of any mold. Once I'm done, I'm just going to wipe down that light bulb just to make sure that it's completely dry. And then I'm going to turn it back on and reassemble my biltong box. And generally, I'll do this after about 5 or 7 days of my meat hanging in there.
Now, if you don't have a biltong box, you can easily place this into your dehydrator, set it to 90 or 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and let it dehydrate for a minimum of 2 to 4 days, depending on the thickness of your biltong.
Our biltong has finished drying. It's been in that box for about 14 days, and it is bone dry. So we're going to go ahead and remove it from the box and move on to the next step. And for the next step, I want to remove 100% of the fat that's on this meat. Now, you could start with very lean meat or remove all the fat at the beginning, but personally, I like the flavor of that seasoned cured fat, so I like to remove it at the end and then just save it because we cook with it. Any spices that have fallen off your meat, you don't want to throw those away because we're going to add all of that back into the end product. So let's just go ahead and shave off some of that fat. You can see right here, our meat is very, very dry. And what we're basically doing right here is we're in the process of making biltong dust. So we don't want any fat in our biltong dust. Let's do one more piece. We're going to remove the fat. The meat can be a little tricky to cut when it's as dry as it is now, so be careful with the knife. And now we're just going to cut our very dried biltong into small pieces. We don't want the pieces too big because we're about to stick this into our blender and we don't want to damage our blender. So small pieces, nothing too large, should be all right. And what I like to do is grab a couple small handfuls and then work in stages. And what this is going to do is primarily not overwhelm the blender, but it's going to allow the blender to work a lot more efficiently at chopping up that meat. And it's going to give you a really fine dust or really fine powder. And that's exactly what we're looking for. We don't want any large pieces. So let's go ahead and turn this on high and get it going.
Now that we have our biltong dust, we need to weigh it because the weight of our biltong dust is going to determine how much beef tallow we add.
We're going to be adding equal parts biltong powder to beef tallow. So let's go ahead and render this on the stove, and then we'll mix them together. Our tallow has been rendered, and at this point it's relatively hot, so just let it sit for about 15 minutes to cool down. Otherwise, it'll just be too difficult to work with. If you can stick your finger in it and it is warm to the touch, then you can go ahead and add it to your biltong dust. Now, our biltong dust weighed 1,300 grams, and so we're going to be adding 1,300 grams of beef tallow. And that's it. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. And let me kind of explain what's happening right now. Because our meat has been dehydrated and there's no more moisture remaining, that beef powder is acting like a sponge to that beef fat. And it's literally just absorbing that fat.
Now, if you know anything about food science, you'll know that moisture is the enemy for food, and it's the main reason why food spoils, because bacteria need moisture to survive. As we replace the moisture with fat, we no longer have a product that is prone to spoilage. So let's just go ahead and mix this up a little bit. Let that biltong dust really soak up that rendered beef tallow.
All right, everything's mixed well. This smells amazing. So let's just go ahead and put it into a tray. This is going to help mold it up a little bit better. Technically, you don't need to put this into a mold. You can just, put it on some wax paper or make little meatballs out of it if you want to. But at this point, we've got it flattened out, and I'm going to set this into the refrigerator for about 30 minutes. This firms up actually relatively quick. So 30 minutes into the fridge, not that very long. And to finish up the process, we're just going to go ahead and cut out our biltong bars. And while we're doing that, let's talk about the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare.
Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for anyone who loves learning and wants to explore their creative skill. I've been a part of Skillshare for about 9 months now and find that it's one of the easiest ways for me to invest in myself. I'm just going to go ahead and get it out there. I like to drink wine, and I eventually want to start making it, but I feel like there's a lot that I need to learn about wine before I go to that next step. So I enrolled in a class that Skillshare offers by Gary Vaynerchuk called Getting Started with Wine, Buy Smarter, Taste More. And this class absolutely blew my mind. I mean, everything from the importance of the sniffy sniff to the influence of tannins and acids on your red and white wine. It was absolutely amazing. And because of this class, I not only feel more confident in selecting different wines, but the actual experience of drinking wine is a lot more enjoyable. Skillshare is tailored specifically for learning, so there's no ads, and there's new premium classes being launched constantly. And now for the best part, because Skillshare is running a special promotion for a limited time where the first 1,000 people who click the link in the description box below or use the code 2GuysACooler will get 1 month free trial of premium Skillshare. So do yourself a favor. As soon as this video is over, click that link in the description box below, head over to Skillshare, and allow them to help you level up your skills.
All right, and there we have it. That's our biltong bar. 50-year shelf life. Unbelievable. You know we're going to give this a little taste, but I think I want to grab some traditional biltong. That's what this is, and do a side-by-side comparison. I absolutely love biltong. I love the flavor. I love the texture. It's just a great meat snack. And so I want to see whether we retained that or whether we lost that by creating this new version of biltong with an enormous shelf life. So there's our traditional, and here's our new version. Let's give them a taste, see what it's like.
All right, we've got our two versions of biltong. One particular question that we get asked a lot deals with shelf life and storage. So let's just address that right quick. Traditional biltong can be kept in a vacuum seal bag in the freezer pretty much indefinitely. It can be kept in a vacuum seal bag in the refrigerator for 1 to 2 months, or you could just leave it out at room temperature, you know, if you're going to eat it pretty quick, for about a week. This version of biltong can be kept in a vacuum seal bag in the freezer indefinitely. It can be kept in a vacuum seal bag in the refrigerator indefinitely, or you could keep it in a vacuum seal bag in a cool, dark place at room temperature pretty much indefinitely. So there you go, two very different shelf lives, different styles of preparation, same spice profile. Let's just see how they taste. That is absolutely scrumptious. Chewy on the outside, tender on the inside. I mean, it is perfectly spiced, very balanced, great, great flavor. All right, so let's go ahead and give this version of biltong a go and see how it stacks up. Wow, very different eating experience. Texture-wise, they couldn't be further apart. Traditional biltong has got that, you know, chewy, tender bite, whereas this one feels firm, so you think you're going to bite into it and it'll crumble, but as soon as you bite into it, it's actually relatively soft, and as you eat it, that tallow starts to melt, coats the mouth. It's a little creamy, it's a little waxy, it's very beefy. If you're familiar with the Mexican jerky called carne seca, it kind of has that carne seca vibe to it. Flavor-wise, I'm actually digging the way that it tastes. It doesn't taste like traditional biltong. The spices don't come off as strong as regular biltong, but what I am getting a lot of is that elevated beef tallow flavor. And it's primarily because we used, you know, a 1-to-1 ratio. So we could probably tweak the recipe a bit, add more pepper, add more toasted coriander if we wanted to sort of enhance those flavors. But the way that it is now, it's actually seasoned quite nice. So there we go, two different versions of biltong. Both are tasty. I gotta be honest, I really enjoy classic biltong. I like the flavor, I like the texture, the whole experience. But what I think this version has going for it is its extended shelf life. I mean, because we took out the moisture, replaced it with tallow, we now have a meat product that's got a lot of calories, a lot of protein that won't spoil. So this could be great for your bug out bag, your camping trip, your hiking trip. I mean, you could take this little block, stick it in a hot skillet, that beef tallow is immediately going to render, and that could be the base for, you know, a pasta dish, a vegetable dish, a soup. You could throw some eggs in there and have kind of like this really weird, you know, South African inspired survival breakfast or something like that. And what's interesting is that the inspiration for this particular version of biltong came from a Native American food called pemmican. And we just took the same principles on how to make pemmican, applied them to our biltong recipe, and what we ended up with was a shelf-stable meat product that was very well seasoned. So it had this really great elevated flavor, and I hope you get a chance to make it. If you've got any questions about this project, leave them in the comment section below. And if you found this video to be entertaining or helpful in any way, a thumbs up is always appreciated. If you're new here and you liked what you saw, we invite you to click that subscribe button and that notification bell to be notified of all future uploads. We appreciate you being here. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.